My name is Welcome to the Bearer of Bad News. I'm your host, Lore Bear, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, so I won't. This is your weekly recap of positive news stories from around the world. Articles in this broadcast were originally published from April 12th to 15th, 2026. The stories in this episode are sourced from various news outlets and publications. The Bearer of Bad News does not conduct independent fact-checking or verification of these stories. Listeners are encouraged to review original sources for accuracy and complete context. We are not responsible for the accuracy or content of third-party reporting. Which is a fancy way of saying, I read it, I didn't report it. And here are this week's stories. First up, we have Australia appoints woman to lead its army for the first time. From Reuters.com, Australia on Monday said a woman would lead its army for the first time in history as part of a reshuffle of the country's defense force leadership. Lieutenant General Susan Coyle, the current Chief of Joint Capabilities, will become Chief of Army in July, the government said in a statement. She will replace Lieutenant General Simon Stewart. Coyle's appointment comes as Australia's military seeks to boost the number of female officers in its ranks. It faces a wave of allegations of systemic sexual harassment and discrimination. From July, we'll have the first ever female Chief of Army in the Australia Army's 125-year history, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said in a statement. Defense Minister Richard Marles called Coyle's appointment a deeply historical moment. As Susan said to me, you cannot be what you cannot see, he said. Susan's achievement will be deeply significant to women who are serving in the Australian Defence Force today and women who are thinking about serving in the Australian Defence Force in the future. Coyle, 55, enlisted in the military in 1987 and has held a number of senior command roles. She will be the first woman to lead any service branch of the military, Marles said. Women currently make up around 21% of the Australian Defence Force, ADF, and 18.5% of senior leadership roles. The ADF has set a target of 25% of overall participation for women by 2030. Last October, a class action lawsuit was filed against the ADF alleging it failed to protect thousands of female officers from systemic sexual harassment, assault, and discrimination. The government on Monday also appointed Vice Admiral Mark Hammond, the current Chief of the Navy, as the head of the ADF, succeeding Admiral David Johnson. The current Deputy Chief of Navy, Rear Admiral Matthew Buckley, will replace Hammond as head of the branch. Up next, a new fruit wash removes pesticides and extends shelf life. From phys.org, University of British Columbia researchers have developed a natural biodegradable wash that removed up to 96% of pesticide residue from fruit and slowed browning and moisture loss. This could mean safer apples, grapes, and other fruit that also stays fresh and crisp for days longer. With rising food prices and nearly half of all fresh produce wasted worldwide each year, finding a way to cut pesticide exposure and reduce spoilage could have a big impact. The findings are published in ACS Nano. Our goal was to create a simple, safe, and affordable wash that improves both food safety and food quality, said senior author Dr. Tianxi Yang, an assistant professor in UBC's Faculty of Land and Food Systems. People shouldn't have to choose between eating fresh produce and worrying about what's on it. A safe, plant-based way to clean produce. While pesticide levels on fruits and vegetables are tightly regulated, trace residues often remain. For people who eat a lot of the same fruit or vegetables, like kids scarfing down big bowls of berries, the amount of residue can go over recommended limits. It was this concern, prompted by Dr. Yang's son's love of fresh blueberries, that sparked her search for a better way to clean fruit. The new wash uses tiny particles made from starch, the same carbohydrate found in corn and potatoes, capped in iron and tannic acid. Tannic acid is a plant compound that gives tea and wine their dry taste. When iron and tannic acid join together, they form sticky, sponge-like clusters that grab onto pesticides and lift them off the fruit's surface. The team tested the wash by applying 3 commonly used pesticides to apples at a local real-world concentrations of about 10 milligrams per liter. In tests on apples, the wash removed between 86 and 96% of these pesticides. Rinsing with tap water, baking soda, or plain starch typically removes less than half. a coating that keeps fruit fresh longer. After washing, the fruit is dipped in the solution once again to form a light, edible, biodegradable layer. Fresh cut apples treated with the coating browned much more slowly and lost less water over 2 days in the fridge. Whole grapes stayed plump for 15 days at room temperature compared to Whole grapes stayed plump for 15 days at room temperature compared with notable Whole grapes stayed plump for 15 days at room temperature compared with noticeable shriveling in untreated grapes. The coating acts like a breathable second skin. Measures of food quality like acidity and soluble sugars also remained higher in coated fruit, said Dr. Yang. The coating also showed antimicrobial effects, meaning it can inhibit harmful bacteria. The study estimated that washing a medium apple in the solution wouldn't introduce a safe amount of iron, well below the daily upper limits for adults set by North American food authorities. Beyond safety and shelf life, our formulation uses micronutrients like iron and phenolic compounds that offer additional health benefits, said Dr. Yang. It doesn't just reduce risk, it can also add nutritional value. Up next, a reforestation corridor in Madagascar offers a future for lemurs and locals. From news.mongabay.com, in eastern Madagascar, Ndazabé Mantadia National Park and the Anela Mazaratra Special Reserve shelter around a dozen species of lemur, alongside an extraordinary array of animals and plants, many of which are found nowhere else on Earth. Once connected by continuous forest, the landscape was fractured in the 1960s when large stretches were cleared for agriculture and cattle pasture. What remained was a patchwork of forest segments separated by degraded land, limiting wildlife movement and threatening biodiversity. Today, a coalition of researchers, conservationists, and local authorities is working to reverse that fragmentation by building a forest corridor from the ground up. The reforestation corridor connecting Ndazabé Mantadia and Anela Mazaratra, connected in 2023, aims to restore 158 hectares, 370 acres of native forest and reconnect those two critical habitats. Led by the Mad Dog Initiative, MDI, a Madagascar-based wildlife conservation NGO, in partnership with the Dr. Abigail Ross Foundation for Applied Conservation, TDARFAC, a nonprofit conservation organization focused on Madagascar, Association Mitsino, and Ecovision Village, the project represents a unique convergence of science and private investment and community action. It began not with a grand plan, but with an exchange of ideas and a shared commitment. As Kim Valenta of MDI recalled, she first recognized the physical disconnect between these two protected areas in 2017 while leading sterilization and vaccination campaigns to limit the impacts of free-roaming pets on wildlife in the region. She then met others who were also committed to restoring the broken landscape. We looked at some maps, and shortly after I proposed seeking funding to start reforesting the 6-kilometer long stretch at a width of 500 meters at the shortest Euclidean distance between the two park edges, Valenta, co-founder of MDI and an assistant professor at the University of Florida, told Mongabay by email. US-based NGOs Seacology and Rewild, together with UK cosmetics company Lush, funded planting across the first 70 hectares, 173 acres. TDARFAC also supported planters' salaries during the early years of the project and contributes staff capacity for ongoing monitoring. More recently, the IUCN SOS Lemurs program provided additional funding to complete planting in the corridor, which is expected to be finished by December 2027. The project focuses exclusively on planting native tree species sourced from nearby forests, including those preferred by lemurs. All seeds that we grow in 2 seedling nurseries to supply the corridor are collected from the existing parks or 2 community forests that directly abut the parks, Valenta said, adding that the team has planted more than 100 native species, some of which are only known locally and remain undescribed by science. First signs of recovery. Our work includes coordinating plant operations, managing ecological monitoring, supporting research, and working with local communities to strengthen long-term conservation outcomes. Johanny Ojivola, field director and project manager at TDARFAC, told Mongabay by email. Monitoring is currently concentrated in a 30-hectare, 74-acre study plot, while 1,200 to 1,500 seedlings were planted per hectare, 2.5 acres, in half of the area. The seedlings planted were grown in soil inoculated with local mycorrhiza, beneficial fungi that can support plant growth. Each hectare within the study plot is monitored once per week, allowing the field team to closely track early forest recovery. Razohilvala said, adding that the field team includes Claude Rakotoa Rivello, a botanical expert on their staff, along with 12 other local field technicians. During monitoring visits, the team records plant identity, planting date, GPS coordinates, attitude, slope, aspect, growth, measurements, and any mortality along with its possible causes. The results so far appear promising. The study plot shows an overall seedling mortality rate of approximately 4%, Razohivola said. Several planted species have already demonstrated strong growth, with some individuals reaching heights of roughly 2 meters, 6.6 feet, within the first 2 years. Up next, cancer therapy breakthrough offers hope beyond cancer patients. CAR-T cell therapy, a cutting-edge cancer treatment, is showing growing promise far beyond oncology, offering potential relief to people with severe autoimmune diseases who have exhausted other options. In simple terms, CAR T cell therapy is a form of treatment that uses a person's own immune cells to attack and kill their cancer cells, Dr. Vinod Balasa, medical director of Valley Children's Cancer and Blood Disorders Center, told Newsweek. While chemotherapy uses a shotgun approach that can impact normal cells while it kills cancer cells, CAR T cell therapy is a targeted treatment. Originally developed to treat certain blood cancers, CAR T therapy is now being tested against autoimmune diseases that are driven by malfunctioning immune cells. Early results suggest it may be capable of putting some patients into long-lasting remission even after years of failed treatment. One woman's recent experience. By the time a hematologist-oncologist, Fabian Mueller, met a critically ill patient at the center of his latest research, he believed the experimental therapy might be her final option. The 47-year-old woman had spent years battling 3 severe autoimmune diseases that caused her body to attack key components of her blood. Despite 9 prior treatment attempts, her conditions remained uncontrolled. By early 2025, the mother of 2 had been hospitalized in Dresden, Germany, for more than 2 months. Doctors administered multiple immunosuppressive drugs and up to 3 daily red blood cell transfusions as they tried to manage a massive disease flare without success. In desperation, her care team contacted Mueller at the University Hospital of Erlangen, roughly 3 hours away from the Dresden hospital. Mueller and his colleagues have gained international attention for pioneering experimental CAR T cell therapies for autoimmune diseases, building on technology first developed for cancer. The patient ultimately received CAR T therapy under compassionate use criteria. Following therapy, she returned to largely a normal life, a result Mueller hopes will prove durable over time. Resetting a faulty immune system. The woman suffered from autoimmune hemolytic anemia, AIHA, immune thrombocytopenia, ITP, and antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, APLAS. These are all B-cell driven diseases, meaning they are caused by immune cells producing harmful antibodies that attack the body's own tissues. CAR T therapy targets this malfunction. The process involves collecting a patient's own immune cells and genetically engineering them to recognize CD19, a marker found on B cells. These altered cells are then reinfused, where they seek out and eliminate the dysfunctional B cells. In this case, the patient had both cold and warm agglutinin, AIHA, that was life-threatening and resistant to 9 prior lines of therapy. She first underwent lymphodepleting chemotherapy, followed by an infusion of CD19-directed CAR T cells. Researchers tracked her response over an 11-month follow-up period. They reported rapid and durable remission of her severe AIHA, along with improvement of her coexisting ITP and APLAS. Small studies and early results from ongoing trials suggest many autoimmune patients treated with CAR T therapy go into remission, with some remaining disease-free for years without additional care. However, researchers stress that broader controlled clinical trials are still needed. These therapies are some of the most powerful weapons we have in our cancer-fighting arsenal, Balasa said, but they also require a combination of medical expertise and specialized equipment to deliver effectively. Up next, green light for 1.3 billion German scheme to rewet farmed peatlands. From agriland.ie, The European Commission has today approved a 1.3 billion German state aid scheme of rewetting of farmed peatlands. The scheme aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by increasing carbon storage in peatlands. According to the Commission, the draining of peatlands in Germany, which are currently used for agriculture and forestry, is responsible for 7% of annual GHG emissions. With this scheme, the German government aims to prevent further decomposition of the peat body and, where possible, to restore peat soils as natural carbon sinks, the Commission said. Don't tell Scotland. Peatlands. The scheme will support measures for the permanent and extensive rewetting of peatlands and for the subsequent agricultural and forestry use of peatlands at elevated water levels in its so-called cultures. The Commission said the measure will cover costs for preparatory advisory services, investments for the implementation phase, compensation for economic damage resulting from the rewetting, and aid to establish cultures. Under the scheme, the aid will take the form of direct grants and will cover up to 100% of eligible costs. In a bid to incentivize the uptake of rewetting measures and to help establish a viable market for cultures, those who join the scheme within 1 year will be eligible for a 20% bonus. The scheme will run until the end of 2029. Scheme. In its assessment, the Commission found that the scheme facilitates the development of an economic activity and has an incentive effect. It also said the positive effects outweigh any potential distortion of competition and trade in the EU. Commenting on the scheme, European Commission Executive Vice President for a Clean and Just Competitive Transition, Teresa Ribera, said, "The scheme that we approved today sets important incentive to develop new sustainable value chains while taking all relevant stakeholders on board. The rewetting of drained peatlands in the EU is an important step towards reaching our climate goals, but it also comes with challenges for farmed land." Up next, almost like Lake Como, Germany transforms former coal mines into Europe's largest lake landscape. From Euronews.com, Eastern Germany's mega complex of artificial lakes created from disused coal mines will reach a new milestone this summer. A decades-long project to transform Germany's former coal mines into a massive lake complex will reach completion this April, creating a watery landscape almost as large as Italy's Lake Como. Lake Sedlitz, the final addition to the 1,400-hectare Lusitane lakeland, will be open for swimming and boating for the first time at the end of this month. According to the Federal Environment Agency, Germany has more than 12,000 natural lakes. In addition, there are hundreds of artificial bodies of water. 575 open-cast lignite mining lakes alone were recorded in Germany in 2003. And their number will continue to rise in the coming decades as more mines are flooded in the former coal fields. Most of them are located in Brandenburg, Saxony-Anhalt, Saxony, and North Rhine-Westphalia. However, none of these projects even come close to what is being created in Lusatia between Berlin and Dresden, from open-cast mine to artificial water landscape. In the German Democratic Republic, miners extracted more than 2 billion tons of lignite, a brown coal, from depths over 60 meters. Mining left huge craters in the landscape, which first began to be transformed in 1967 with the flooding of Lake Senftenberg, part of Lusatian Lakeland, now Europe's largest artificial water landscape. It draws visitors to its harbors, canals, and campsites. There's even a community in the region called New Sealand, around which the water landscape created from former open-cast mines has developed. Without mining, Lusatia would have remained a region almost without lakes, as the old moraine landscape, with its permeable gravel and sand, does not naturally form lakes. Incidentally, the name Lusatia goes back to the West Slavic term Luzica, which simply means marshland. The gigantic scale of the project. A tourist destination, the Lusatian Lakeland comprises 23 human-made post-mining lakes with a total water surface area of 14,000 hectares. 10 of these are going to be connected in future by canals for leisure boating. The plan is to have a continuously navigable water area of 7,000 hectares. 4 of the 13 planned navigable canals have already been completed and 6 more are under construction. The Lusitz and Central German Mining Administration Company, LMBV, is responsible for the rehabilitation and flooding of the former open cast mines, a federal company that was assigned 19 open cast mining areas in Lusatia in the early 1990s and has been organizing their reclamation ever since. In total, the LMBV is developing around 50 large post-mining lakes, 24 of which are in Lusatia alone. The LMBV, Dr. Uwe Steinhauber, tells Euronews Earth, "This is a process that will take 2 generations," says Steinhauber. Up next, scientists reverse brain aging with a nasal spray. From stories.tamu.edu, new therapy is turning back the clock in aging brains, healing inflammation, restoring memory, and reshaping the future of brain age-related therapies. Picture this. Your brain is a high-performance engine. Over decades, it doesn't just wear down, it also starts to run hot. Tiny fires or inflammation smolder deep within the brain's memory center, creating a persistent brain fog that makes it harder to think, form new memories, or even adapt to new environments, all the while increasing the risk to disorders like Alzheimer's disease. Scientists call this slow-burning neuroinflammaging, and for decades, it was thought to be the inevitable price of growing older. Is this a real article? Until now. A landmark study from researchers at the Texas A&M University Naresh K. Vashisht College of Medicine suggests the inflammatory tide responsible for brain aging and brain fog might actually be reversible. The solution doesn't involve brain surgery, but a simple nasal spray. Led by Dr. Ashok Shetty, University Distinguished Professor and Associate Director of the Institute for Regenerative Medicine, along with Senior Research Scientist Dr. Madhu Lavati Narayana and Dr. Mahidhar Kodali. The team developed a nasal spray that, with just 2 doses, dramatically reduced brain inflammation, restored the brain's cellular power plants, and significantly improved memory. The most surprising part? It all happened within weeks and lasted for months. The findings, published in the Journal of Extracellular Vesicles, could reshape the future of neurodegenerative therapies and even change how scientists think about brain aging itself. Brain fog to brain focus, the future of cognitive therapy. The implications for this research could be nothing short of revolutionary. As we develop and scale this therapy, a simple 2-dose nasal spray could one day replace invasive, risky procedures or maybe even months of medication, Shetty said. Societal impact could be just as profound. In the United States alone, new dementia cases are projected to double over the next 4 decades, from about 514,000 in 2020 to about 1 million in 2060. The trend signals a pressing need for policies and innovative interventions that can minimize both the risk and severity of neurodegenerative disorders like dementia, Shetty said. The study also hints at broad applicability, working equally effectively across both genders, a rare outcome in biomedical research. It's universal, Shetty said. Treatment outcomes were consistent and similar across both sexes. One day, the approach could even help stroke survivors rebuild lost brain function, or slow, even reverse, the effects of cognitive aging in humans. Our approach redefines what it means to grow old, Shetty said. We're aiming for successful brain aging, keeping people engaged, alert, and connected, not just living longer, but living smarter and healthier, Shetty said. Up next, 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day linked to lower risk of mental health disorders, study finds. From Euronews.com, moderate coffee consumption is associated with a lower risk of mental health disorders in a new study. Could daily coffee intake have a proactive effect on mental health? A new study suggests moderate consumption may lower the risk of mental health disorders. The study, published in the Journal of Affective Disorders, found that 2 to 3 daily cups of coffee might be beneficial for mental health, especially in men. On the other hand, consuming 5 or more cups per day was associated with a higher risk for mental disorders. The research team analyzed data from more than 460,000 participants from the UK Biobank, a large prospective cohort including people aged 40 to 69 years, to investigate the association between daily coffee consumption and various mental disorders. Participants answered questions about their daily coffee consumption, including amounts and types of coffee, such as decaffeinated, instant, and ground, and were followed for a median of 13.4 years. Researchers found a J-shaped pattern in the results, meaning that those who drank Too little or too much coffee did not see the same benefits as moderate drinkers. The association between coffee consumption and mood disorders was stronger in men, the study noted. Currently, there is a growing interest in the role of diet and nutrition in the prevention and management of mental disorders. The World Health Organization estimates that over 1 billion people are living with mental health disorders. Mental health conditions such as anxiety and depression represents the second biggest reason for long-term disability, contributing to the loss of a healthy life, the WHO has warned. According to the authors, there is a need for preventative strategies to curb the pandemic of mental health disorders. How can coffee help? Coffee contains over 1,000 bioactive ingredients, including caffeine, polyphenols, melanoidins, and diterpenes. Studies suggest that the anti-inflammatory effects of compounds such as caffeine and chlorogenic acid may partly explain the lower risk of mental health conditions observed among moderate coffee drinkers. Caffeine exerts the neuroprotective effects through dual mechanisms: activation of A1R associated with antidepressant effects, and inhibition of A2AR, which counteracts stress-induced neural dysfunction, the authors noted. The anti-inflammatory properties of caffeine have been previously linked to a lower risk of dementia and slower cognitive decline in previous studies. Up next, autonomy, key to happiness, study finds. From phys.org, if you can't get no satisfaction, then maybe it's because happiness does not only stem from pleasure or a meaningful existence. Instead, a new Simon Fraser University study suggests that freedom is the key to happiness. Researchers found that while positive feelings and pleasure are important, autonomy and the freedom to make your own choices is a better gauge of happiness. People are not merely hedonists, says Jason Payne, a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Psychology. When people step back and evaluate whether their life is going well, they consider more than just their emotional balance sheet. They appear to ask themselves not just, do I feel good, but also, am I free? Unlocking the secret to happiness has been the subject of debate since time immemorial. Experts usually suggest that happiness stems from feeling good. Effective experiences, more pleasure, and less pain means a better life. Meaningful existence, flourishing, happiness comes from many factors, including good relationships, competence, virtue, autonomy, and personal growth. The study, published in the Journal of Positive Psychology, sought to put these two schools of thought to the test by surveying more than 1,200 adults from Canada and the United Kingdom. The survey measured people's positive and negative feelings, their life satisfaction, and 3 psychological traits: autonomy, the feeling of being free to make choices; competence, feeling effective and capable; and relatedness, feeling close and connected to others. Researchers then used advanced statistical modeling to determine what influences people's satisfaction. Unsurprisingly, positive and negative emotions were strong indicators of happiness, but autonomy, the sense that you are free to make your own choices, was a better indicator of life satisfaction. Even after accounting for how good and bad people felt, those who felt more autonomous were more satisfied in their lives, says Payne. Autonomy was the only psychological need that seemed to contribute something that feelings alone did not explain. Aside from changing widespread assumptions about happiness, the findings also have practical implications for the workplace, as well as public policy, according to Payne. Up next, sperm whales' communication closely parallels human language, study finds. From theguardian.com, we may appear to have little in common with sperm whales, enormous ocean-dwelling animals that last shared a common ancestor with humans more than 90 million years ago. But the whales' vocalized communications are remarkably similar to our own, researchers have discovered. Not only do sperm whales have a form of alphabet and form vowels within their vocalizations, but the structure of those vowels behaves in the same way as human speech, the new study has found. Sperm whales communicate in a series of short clicks called codas. Analysis of these clicks showed that the whales can differentiate vowels through the short or elongated clips or rising or falling tones, using patterns similar to languages such as Mandarin, Latin, or Slovenian. The structure of the whale's communication has close parallels in the phonetics and phonology of human languages, suggesting independent evolution. The paper, published in the Proceedings B journal, states, sperm whale coda vocalizations are highly complex and represent one of the closest parallels to human phonology of any analyzed animal communication system, it added. The findings are the latest discovery about the lives of sperm whales by Project SETI, Cetacean Translation Initiative, an organization that has studied whales off the coast of Dominica in an attempt to find out what they are saying. Last month, the project released a video of a sperm whale giving birth while other whales supported it. Until the 1950s, it was not clear to scientists that sperm whales even vocalized, but modern technology, including artificial intelligence, is helping unlock the language of these creatures, with unexpected similarities to our own speech. I think it's another humbling moment that we're not the only species with rich, communicative, communal, and cultural lives, said David Gruber, founder and president of Project CT. These whales could be passing information along generation to generation to generation for over 20 million years. Humans now are just having the right tools and desire to be able to look at whale voices in this way to see what complexity that has been there all along. Studying sperm whales can be challenging. They dive deep underwater for up to 50 minutes in search of squid to eat, only surfacing for 10 minutes at a time, but it's near the surface where the animals chit-chat, as Gruber put it, with their heads close together. If you watch sperm whales, they put their heads right together and click into each other's heads, he said. It's like if you wanted to talk to someone about Chaucer novel or something, you wouldn't want to do that from opposite ends of a football stadium. You'd want to get real close to have a real sophisticated conversation. That sperm whale conversation sounds, to our ears, little more than a staccato Morse code, but by removing the gaps between the clicks, researchers were able to find patterns strikingly similar to human speech. Much like how we alter our tongue position to change an A sound into an E sound, whales can manipulate their organs to produce different vowel sounds of their own. Gaspar Bugos, a linguist at University of California, Berkeley, who led the new paper, said that this level of complexity in sperm whale speech was beyond anything that he had studied in other creatures, such as parrots and elephants, and highlights the parallels between our lives and those of the whales. They have very different lives to us. They are not stuck to the ground all the time. They float in the water. They sleep vertically, said Begas. Yet you realize that there's a lot that unifies us. They have grandmas. They babysit each other's calves. They give collaborative births. They are very loud during a birth and so on. It's such a distant intelligence, but in many ways very relatable. The new study shows that sperm whale communication isn't just about patterns of clicks. It involves multiple interacting layers of structure, said Mauricio Cantor, a behavioral ecologist at the Marine Mammal Institute, who was not involved in the research. With this study, we're starting to see that these signals are organized in ways we didn't fully appreciate before. The latest discovery around sperm whale speech has inched forward the possibility of someday fully understanding the creatures and even communicating with them. Project SETI has set a goal of being able to comprehend 20 different vocalized expressions relating to actions such as diving and sleeping within the next 5 years. Actually being able to fully grasp what the whales are saying and being able to converse with them is still a longer-term proposition. Gruber said, but not an outlandish one. It's totally within our grasp, he said. I've already got a lot further than I thought we could, but it will take time and funding. At the moment, we are like a 2-year-old, just saying a few words. In a few years' time, maybe we'll be more like a 5-year-old. And lastly, we have this European country is promising bargain energy on sunny days to use up excess solar power. From Euronews.com, solar and wind power have hit record highs in Europe, sparking hope for energy independence in the face of soaring fuel prices. But outdated power grids and limited battery storage are struggling to keep up. In the UK, Germany, France, and the Netherlands, renewable generators are increasingly being paid to shut off, a process known as curtailment, when supplies become so high that they outstrip demand, overload the grid, making it unstable. But could it be cheaper to give the surplus energy away for free? Last month, the UK's Department for Energy Security and Net Zero announced it was trialing a new system to supply homes with discounted power on windy days. In its summer outlook released on 14 April, the country's national energy system operator, NESCO, which is responsible for keeping the network stable, built on this promise by encouraging grid operators to boost energy uses when supplies are high. This could mean paying households and factories to consume excess power, a UK first. Solar surge drives dip in UK energy demand. Renewables produced a record 44% of UK electricity in 2025, up from just 3% in 2000. In its recent report, NESCO said the UK's supply could exceed demand at times this summer, particularly due to a proliferation of home solar. It could see the UK, a net importer of energy, become an energy exporter at times, NESCO added. However, Brexit and a rise in renewables across Europe means that exporting won't always be straightforward. How else can the country manage surplus power? Already, variable tariffs encourage households to use electricity when demand is low by reducing cost during off-peak hours. Now, rewards such as discounts or direct payments can be provided for using energy when supplies are high. That means consumers could get a real bargain when turning on the washing machine when it's really sunny, said Jess Ralston, head of the energy at UK nonprofit, the Energy Climate Intelligence Unit, ECIU. Good little end to the week. And that is the end of this week's articles. Hopefully, they added a little positive joy to your life. Before we end, I have our final segment of the show, something I like to call a tale of two paragraphs. In this segment, I take the first and last paragraph from an article on Substack or another similar source and read them to you to encourage you to go read the article yourself. Many people forget the power of the written word to move us and how intriguing the middle of the story is. The less I read, the better, but people often want to know how we got to endings more than the endings themselves. And maybe you will go exploring the Substack and read the paragraphs in between. This week's article is from Steve Magness's Substack entitled The Hidden Cost of Comfort. In the 1950s, over 90% of toddlers were potty trained by 18 months. More recently, that number is about 4%. The average age of potty training has drifted to nearly 37 months. What in the world is going on with our kids? Their skill and aptitude hasn't changed, neither has biology. The answer applies to so much more than potty training. It helps explain performance, creativity, and maybe even part of our mental health issues. So what is it? A few paragraphs in between and an ending of, we need to wrestle with discomfort, whether it's helping your kids with the first sign of struggle on the playground, or with their homework, or with yourself in reaching for the quickest solution to the slightest feeling of unease. We need to let folks sit with that experience. We've largely engineered it away. It's time to deliberately bring it back. For more from Steve Magness, visit him at stevemagness.substack.com. We hope you enjoyed our show, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, so I won't. Have a good day.